Good evening, everyone, and welcome to SocialFlight Live. I'm Jeff Simon. We have a fantastic show for you this evening. Rod Machado is here again, and I am so thrilled for it. You know, when I think about 2021 getting ready to kick off and the end of 2020, of course, I cannot imagine a better person to have on the show to kick us off into a new year with such a bright and wonderful tone and so many things to go with it. Before we get started, a couple quick tips, of course, as usual. Tonight's broadcast will be recorded. It'll be available directly in SocialFlight, the SocialFlight mobile app, and on socialflight.com. You can also go to SocialFlight's YouTube channel. Just search for one word, SocialFlight, on there, and that will take care of it. If you do check out the mobile app and also the website, there is a new video section that we're very excited to announce that has all of the different programs that we've done available to you in one place. In addition to that, of course, you have all of the other webinars and destinations and so many other things going on to help keep you flying. And that is exactly why we created it, and that's why we're here tonight. Our entire program is dedicated to supporting general aviation. And with that, I'd like to also say, please send us your stories. We have a new program of SocialFlight Stars. We would like to be able to announce and spread the word of people who have new achievements, new ratings, get someone you know that got a private pilot license, everything that that we can celebrate that helps push our industry forward and helps encourage more people in general aviation is just something that we're thrilled about. And with that, I'd like, as a proud father, to make another announcement on my end. Jake Simon, who is my eldest son, just got signed off by the FAA under the experience qualifications to be able to take his exams for his A&P license. I'm absolutely thrilled about that, and we'll be talking more about that in the future because I really want to encourage more people out there to start logging that time. If you have a chance to work on your annual with a mechanic, anything that you can do to start building experience, that gets you further and further towards having the required 30 months of full-time experience and the hours that the FAA would require in part-time to be able to actually get your A&P license for yourself. And so I encourage everyone to do that. Congratulations again to Jake. And with that, I would like to bring on Rod Machado, and I will turn this on here for Rod. Rod is a legendary aviation author, speaker, flight instructor, combining his unique approach to flight training with his humorous style that is more needed now than ever before. An ATP-rated pilot who still gets excited at the Cessna 150 flyby. Rod has logged over 8,000 hours, most of it while giving dual instruction, and with a degree in both aviation science and psychology, which no doubt has led to his unique style of teaching. There is literally nothing else I can say that would better ring in the new year than welcome, Rod. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for having me again, and for the audience, what number of audience people we have in attending. I think it's your mom and my mom, if I'm not mistaken. But no, you always have such a
That's
popular.
True. We've got an awful lot of moms out there.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm using Rent-A-Mom now because it's because I can script what she says to me and what have you. So, but I'm doing very well and having a great time. Are you having trouble finding somebody to cut your hair? By the way, I mean your hair looks good. It's me that's having trouble. Having to cut my own hair, which is pretty weird. So I figure what I do is I do the left side first and then leave the right side alone and just see if everybody likes it. And then a week later or so, I'll do the right side. This is how you find out. You've got to experiment. So
I like it.
Yeah, you're supposed to ask me.
Do you set a timer? Is that like the fuel, like burn a little off the right tank and then switch to
spot on. Spot on. You know exactly the drill. That's exactly correct. So anyway, yeah, 2020 has been a strange time, and I sure hope it disappears quick. By the way, I've got to show you something here. I prepare, no matter what I do, I always prepare, even though I've done these things hundreds and thousands of times, but I'm always preparing. So I'm going through my old goodies today, going through old notes and what have you, and I found this. Now this is a shade. It's basically a sunshade that you get at a restaurant called Coco's.
Huh.
And a student brought this out one time, and he said, listen, I didn't have my view limiting device. I'm wondering if I can just substitute this. And I said, sure, there's no problem, go ahead. So, because you cover it down like that, and it's perfect, because what it does is it acts just like a cover, and it's what have you. So he's got this on, and it's got a little rubber band that it has worn out over the years. And so he's scanning, doing his scan, and all of a sudden, I didn't notice it, but all of a sudden I see this. It comes down. He's got this little opening here, and it's down. He's looking, he's scanning. He's doing a really good job on the instrument scan. And then when he sees me look over, he goes, okay, and he's back to doing like. Students are some of the trickiest people in the world. So anyway, now I know that there are going to be 1,000 students that want to know how to get one of these things, and this is the last one. So it'll be on eBay later on this evening.
So that's interesting. Okay, and I know we're not going to go on any linear path tonight because it's the end of the year. So I'm curious. When you're in the cockpit with a student that's got foggles, that's got a hood on or something like that, does every instructor already know when the student's like cheating, looking out the corner? Like, is that just blatantly obvious to all you?
Oh, students are, well, first of all, students are very clever at cheating. You know that. They don't do it maliciously. They do it as an act of survival, and they want to impress the instructor. Of course, it's important to try to make the instructor happy when direct payments to their account doesn't work. And students, I had one student one time, they would had the hood on, and then all of a sudden the hood comes up, and he looks around and he puts it back down, and he's scanning. Hood comes up, he looks around and he puts it back down, and I go, what the heck? And I boom, hit his hood up and twisted it over. I said, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm practicing flying in and out of the clouds. He puts his hood down and goes back and forth to scanning like that. So I guess instructors have separate ways of doing that. You can make the weather or simulate really bad weather, have them wear the foggles and the hood. Now that is some nasty weather to simulate, but it's hard to cheat like that. But most of the time they do pretty well. They don't cheat. I think they cheat though whenever you have a problem with listening to air traffic control, because air traffic control, of course, they speak at 60 with peak gusts to 90. And it's hard listening to an air traffic controller when you first start flying. As a matter of fact, the interesting thing is we can learn to listen at a rate that's spoken at 10 times the rate people normally speak at. And normally we'll speak about 160 words per minute, something like that. So we can learn to listen at a much faster rate with a 40% distortion of the transmission, which happens to be exactly what's coming out of most cheap air traffic control towers, where they haven't upgraded the radio, or your radios haven't been upgraded. So I figured what we need is an air traffic controller simulator, and I had one. I lost it. I had one 25 years ago. I lost it, and I just found it. Now, I don't know if this is going to work via the webinar format. So, I'm putting myself on right out there without a safety net, as I always do. This is the air traffic controller simulator, okay? Now, I'm going to move this back and forth, and this is there's a music reading here, and it's going to simulate exactly what it sounds like in an air traffic control transmission. Listen to this. Now, I know that has an effect on pilots, because whenever a pilot hears this, they immediately say, oh my God, I got to write that down. And they grab their pen and they start writing that down just like that. And the thing that really helps here is when air traffic controller gives you a clearance, you know how they do. They wait at the airport and they see you just until you get really busy. They know you're busy because they're looking at you with their telescopic binoculars. And they say, 2132 Bravo, this is air traffic control. You got a clearance ready to copy? And you go, no. And okay, after departure, turn right heading 360 degrees, climb, maintain 3,000 feet, contact departure control 124.2, squawk 0632, left turn, Victor 8, all the intersection, hold northeast of the intersection, 3,000 feet, expect for the clearance at 10 minutes after the hour, 5 minutes after the hour, now, over. And you're going, whoa. And then all of a sudden you think, wait a minute. You pull this out of your pocket right here, and here comes a readback, and you go like this. And then you just wait. And all of a sudden you'll hear, read back correct. That was incredible. But cleared as filed. Just let you go off. Jeffrey, this is what happens when an adult man is left alone without adult supervision.
I like that.
So
That's great. And especially if you
These are
can just wait
crazy
5 minutes
things.
and then wait for the controller handoff and ask for direct, you can pull that off.
Oh, I do many times. I think the air traffic controller is a very powerful instrument. Air traffic controller simulator, very powerful instrument. It'll be on eBay later tonight. All proceeds go to charity. My wife's charity, Nordstrom's. And
I believe that they buy all of your books, they get one of those. Is it something like that?
strangely enough, I used to give them out at Oshkosh. I would give the air traffic controller simulator out at Oshkosh. And it wasn't long after the first month when Oshkosh ended that I started receiving emails from air traffic controllers saying, please do not pass out the air traffic controller simulator again, simply because it works too well, apparently. But you know what's interesting about that is as a general rule, people are far more stressed out by air traffic control than they are by most other things. And the FAA study in 1964 confirmed that. The FAA said that talking to an air traffic controller is as stressful as a fighter pilot experience, the type of stress a fighter pilot experience under combat conditions, or at that time, an astronaut in orbital flight. Now, when you think about that, that's some pretty powerful juice right there in terms of stress. So the decision was, of course, to expand and try to enhance a person's communication skills. But of course, it still makes them nervous, and that's just the way that is. I was sitting in the run-up area one time with a student of mine. I tell the story way too often, but I'll tell this one, and I've got a lot of other stories. I'm in the run-up area with a student of mine, and I hear the air traffic controller and there's a student and another instructor in another airplane. The student's having a little trouble. All of a sudden, you hear this. You hear what do I say? What do I say? Well, tell him you want to take off. I want to take off. What do I say now? Nothing. Let go of that button, dummy. And you can't tell me controllers don't have a good sense of humor, because all of a sudden I hear, well, what do I say? Well, tell him he's cleared for takeoff. You're cleared for takeoff. What do I say now? Nothing. Let go of that button, dummy. So air traffic controllers have an awesome sense of humor. You just, but as a general rule, think about this. We laugh at the things that cause us the most stress. As a psychological principle, that's fundamental. We don't laugh at things that we hold sacrosanct or we hold dear. Salman Rushdie found that out when he wrote his book about one particular religion, and the folks were pretty upset with him, so he went into hiding. And it's such a sad thing, but that's sacrosanct. But we use laughter as a means of reducing the stress, and as a result, people tend to, whenever I tell any air traffic controller jokes at one of my big programs that I do at Oshkosh, then it tends to get the most laughter, and that's because it causes us the most stress. People don't want to appear foolish when they're talking to an air traffic controller. That deep, well-modulated, resonant voice we hear coming out of air traffic control, the tower, I tell you, can be very disturbing sometimes. That is why the most important word in aviation when it comes to dealing with any air traffic controller, especially when you're busy, are the words stand by. If you could say the word stand by, all of a sudden the controller is nonplussed, because normally they're the ones that use that word. And the controller is not going to say, I'm sorry, this is a no standby zone or a no standby day. They don't say that. So you could say standby, and the controller has to stand by. And the number of times I've used that and taught students to use that, and if I could get more people to do it when you're busy, just tell the controller to stand by. Controllers are very understanding about those things, and sometimes you have to do that just to keep your sanity.
That's fascinating, because that's the first time I actually heard that particular one. I mean, I've heard like asking for a holding vector or doing other things that you can do at any time just to take a break and get yourself together. And we always hear them say stand by to us. But I don't think I've ever heard a pilot say stand by to a controller.
Oh yeah, it's because they don't do it often enough. I suspect that, isn't it sort of that ego thing? We don't want to let people think or give them any impression at all that we're not capable of handling whatever maximum bit rate of information that the tower throws at us. and you know, not done maliciously, but that's just what air traffic controllers do sometimes. We don't want to let anybody know or give our fellow pilots around the airport the impression that we just are not up to the maximum performance requirement that can occur at an airport. Heavens knows it can get so busy, and you are so busy in the cockpit that the controller wants you to do something, you just can't do it. Stand by. And it's such a powerful phrase. And, you know, like I say, air traffic controllers are there to help people. I just don't think that we need to keep that in mind. Let me give you a good example. In 1983, I met a fellow by the name of Harry Blum. And I believe it was at a flight instructor revalidation clinic in Denver. And Harry told me a story. He said he landed his airport at Denver one night. They have a big, tall control tower there. And they had, it was Denver Stapleton or Denver proper, I'm not sure, but big tower, and the transient parking's right underneath the tower. So he gets out of his airplane, ties the airplane down, and he puts his briefcase right next to the right wheel well, and you know, puts on the tie down chain and everything. And remember, now this is at night, and he starts to walk away, but he doesn't bring his briefcase. It's sitting right underneath the wing and the wheel well in this Cessna 182. So as Harry's walking away, all of a sudden he sees this large flashing white light, very intense. It goes vroom, vroom, vroom. It's coming from out of the sky. Vroom, vroom, vroom. And Harry stops. He stops and he's thinking, flashing white light on the airport. What does that mean? Oh, return to starting point on airport. He goes back to the airplane, picks up his briefcase. Hey, thank you guys. And walks on away. But that's a great example of air traffic controllers.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, you know, like I say, air traffic controllers are very, very accommodating, you know, and but sometimes they do talk fast, and that is just the way it is. And although I have to admit, you know what scares me most? The thing that scares me most about talking to any air traffic control or flight service station personnel, I'm going to witness to you. This is what scares me. Whenever I call up and get a weather briefing or call up for TFR information or something like that, and the flight service station specialist, you know, I ask for all the appropriate things, the galactic NOTAMs. I mean, I start big and work down, and I get all that stuff. And then at the end, you have to end the conversation. Now, if you're going to end the conversation, I talk to my wife far more often than I talk to the flight service station specialist. I have to consciously walk myself through this because my biggest fear that I'll say, okay, thank you very much, thank you, love you, boom, like that. Oh no, oh no, oh. And you see, the biggest fear is that all of a sudden I'll hear, oh, love you too, and he hangs up his phone, and then I can never call that flight service station outlet back because I could get the same guy. And
exactly. And they've got the caller ID. They bring you up. They know exactly. They're going to be like, "Hey, how are you?
How are you?" Exactly. You're looking nice. Or they come on over your house for a personal briefing. No, thank you. That's where I draw the line. So
yeah, exactly.
Those kind of things, that scares me. So I guess if you have to be scared of something.
How many times they do that? It's probably the same number of times as they also get people, which I have personally been completely guilty of playing the captain announcement in the cockpit and instinctively pushing the push to talk button during it and announcing over the entire frequency that people need to put their tray tables in their upright and locked positions.
Oh, very embarrassing. Yeah, I've never done that before. I've never known anybody to do that before. So you're like the first person that I've ever heard of. So this is recorded, right? The FA can go back and look at it. Oh my God.
Absolutely, absolutely. My name is James Jones.
It's so easy. Would you like to know how I embarrassed myself one time in an airplane? I'll never forget this. And every time I ask if anybody else has ever done this, nobody responds. And I know they have. They're just chickening out and not because they don't want to support me whenever I ask this. I don't blame them. But have you ever mistaken the planet Venus for another airplane? In the evening sky, Venus is very bright. Have you ever done that before? I have. One time at LA Center, and we're heading back. Actually, no, we're heading back to San Jose. Recall from Santa Ana. excuse me, and I look up, because I have a student in the left seat of the airplane. I look up and I go, whoa, and I grab the controls, I move it forward, because it's hard to hit a moving object. That's the basis of see and avoid and don't get hit. That's the avoid part. It's hard to hit a moving object. So I dive the airplane and I come back up and whoa, it's still there. It's still coming at me. I said, LA send this is a Cessna 2132 Bravo. Where's that traffic at 12 o'clock? Distance, please. And he goes, 213 Bravo, there's no traffic at 12 o'clock there. It's nobody in on the scope. We don't see anything. And I said, well, I have an aircraft coming right at me. He goes, sir, that's Venus. Because he's played this game before. I think, oh no, I've embarrassed myself. And the problem is I've embarrassed myself at the speed of light. So my embarrassment is traveling around the globe now. It's only a matter of time for somebody reports it on, some social media. So he says, it's Venus. So I thought, what do I do? So there's only one thing I could do. I click the mic and I say, distance? Because 433 million miles away. Roger, keep us posted. And there was nothing I could say. I was just deeply embarrassed. So, and whenever
that's like a mic drop moment. You got that.
Oh God, it was embarrassing, so much so. But
Not
that's
really.
okay.
I think you wound that. Well, I don't think you could have ended that any better.
Well, much like my career, and or potentially. So, but the thing is, Jeffrey, is that transmission is still traveling around the galaxy now through to the ends of the universe, and I'll never be the same again. So, yep, those things happen. But the thing is, it's easy to get embarrassed in aviation, and I guess that's a good thing, because if you don't get embarrassed and you don't have much of a conscience in that sense, you might say a self-respect for the position that you hold, wanting to do things well, you desire to be an upstanding member, a good aviation citizen, what have you. So, but it does happen. The thing is to get over it quickly. One becomes embarrassed one should allow oneself to be embarrassed to the extent that it helps you modify your behavior, and then you let it go, because happens to everybody. What can I say? A lot of strange things. People do a lot of strange things and embarrass themselves. One of my students one time comes back, takes a Cessna 150, goes out to the practice area, and he's soloed. He probably has about 6 hours of solo, but he's good enough to go out to the practice area. He's doing steep turns out there. He wasn't planning on doing steep turns. He just started doing them. And so he's out there doing his steep turns, and it's a Cessna 150 Land-O-Matic rental, so whatever's attached in the airplane, it's not attached really well because it's an old rental airplane, and the airplane's been banged against the runway thousands and thousands of times. So things tend to loosen up. The little placard with the end number on the airplane just fell off the panel. And so he didn't know it, though, unbeknown to him. So he's coming back into John Wayne Airport, Orange County Airport at the time, and he picks up the mic and keys the mic. I said picks up the mic. That is really old school. Keys the mic. And he keys the mic, says, Orange County Tower, this is November, and because he can't see the numbers, and he doesn't have that sort of adaptive short-term memory that works for flight instructors. You remember a number, you hear a number at that airplane, it stays in your consciousness until you land and you go into a new airplane. So he can't remember the number, and you're not going to stick your head outside because you can lose your sunglasses trying to look at the numbers on the tail. And heavens knows some people have done that before. So he says, November, Bob, over. And because what else is he going to say? And the controller says, hello, Bob. We've been waiting for you. You're number 2 to land, following Fred. And when you get down, you give Chuck a call, okay? And poor Bob. But what are you going to do? I mean, you get embarrassed. Things like that happen.
No kidding. But I mean, the reality courses, it's all about getting over that and moving on to the next thing. And that, I mean, what do you teach your students about you know, not letting things steamroll from one to the other, because it's always the first mistake or the first issue that someone has that's fine, but you're still flying the plane. And so it seems like one of the most important things you can do as a pilot that they tell you, always fly the plane, keep flying the plane.
Yes, indeed.
And so is there certain advice, there's certain techniques that you use to get people over that when they hit something and back in the game?
Well, actually, you make a very interesting observation there, because when people become embarrassed in social situations, it's very, very easy for that person to lose focus on the conversation they're having and turn inward and self-reflect. And self-reflect to the extent that self-reflection causes a cascade of self-doubt, where they start to now wonder, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed, the person's looking at me. And then you start to project that to all the other people in the room, thinking they're probably all looking at me because the guy I was just talking to communicated telepathically to all those people about what a fool I am. And of course, I exaggerate, but only a bit, because that's how people think sometimes. So embarrassment can be immobilizing in that sense, and it can also be quite deadly. Now, that your point, I thought, was very, very good, because it brings up probably one of the oldest, most useful and practical aphorisms in aviation. In fact, what I have found is it's the simplest stuff that makes the most sense, that has the most practical value. And when anybody gives you any advice, if it's too complex, it probably doesn't work. It's probably not useful, probably never been tested. Here's my advice in that situation. The most fundamental thing that you do when flying any airplane is always do this: aviate, navigate, and communicate. Nothing is more important than that. And as Bob Hoover says, you fly the airplane all the way to the ground, as Bob Hoover said, the great Bob Hoover.
Yes.
And it's a simple thing, but no matter what type of discomfort we may be feeling, we've got to fly the airplane first. Now, here's an addendum to that. One of the ways psychologists tell us to be able to ensure that we do the right thing in an airplane, or to behave properly under stress, is to talk to ourselves, because the simple act of talking to ourselves puts us in a position where we become our own audience. Why? Because the words that we use echo through our ear chamber into our ear and then back into the brain. So it's a self-feedback mechanism in that sense, and it's as if somebody's talking to ourselves. But here's the secret, and this is what most people don't say, but it's part of the research that was done to reaffirm the value of talking to yourself, and that is you use your own name, because that's the most personal sound to you. So you say, Rod, relax. Rod, calm down, fly the airplane. It doesn't matter if everybody's looking at you. It doesn't matter, in that your career is over now. And there are many potential opportunities in Wally Thor's school of trucking. So relax, and but I'm exaggerated, of course. And no insult to Wally Thor's school of trucking, by the way. But the deal is, use your own name to control your own behavior. And that's why, it's like I heard one time, I'm going through a store, and all of a sudden I hear, it's a man pushing his son, and the kid's crying and everything, and I hear, relax, Monty, Monty, relax. Calm down, Monty, Monty, be calm, relax. And I passed the gentleman, and I said, sir, that's amazing. You have such great self-control over your son here, Monty. He says, no, I'm Monty. And so that kind of gives you the impression that talking to yourself using your own name works. Yeah,
I'm gonna put that to work directly, because I gotta tell you, I am guilty of not using that. And case in point, last night went up for currency, went up, did a bunch of things, and decided, hey, I'll throw it all in at the exact same time. Let's go in and do some testing stuff on the aircraft after maintenance. Let's go in and get our night flying done. Let's go in and get a bunch of IFR approaches done. Recipe for success, right? Absolutely, yes. Exactly what you want to do. Perfect. And didn't take any of my own advice, went up, ended up one of the more complex approaches, did a poor job, to say the least. And then coming out of that, got a little too focused on that, didn't realize until I started going through the next approach, like, okay, landing gear down, go down. Well, that's why I've been so slow since this whole time. Never took it up to begin with. Like, whole thing. Like you can tell, never got over it, get caught up. I should have been sitting the whole time and using what you just said and talking to myself and using my own name.
Oh, absolutely. No,
Hopefully not in a scolding tone.
it's a powerful self-behavior modifier. And when things get tough, you talk to yourself, use your own name, and it's like having an instructor there that can give you the guidance that you need. And by the way, you would be the first person climbing out in an airplane going, what is wrong? Now, I call that the Captain Kirk moment from one of the greatest movies ever made, Star Trek Wrath of Khan. And that's right. That's right. The greatest movie ever made, where Captain Kirk comes upon a ship that has its running lights off. It's a Federation ship, and he's with Spock and all the gang from the Star Trek crew, and he comes up and he comes across the ship, and the nav officer, a young lady, says, "Captain, regulations require that we lower shields or raise shields and prepare armaments when we come across a ship that's in this condition." He said, "No, no." He goes, "That's just dang peculiar." And all of a sudden, Khan shoots him with one of his photon torpedoes, and that was not a very nice thing to do, by the way. And anyway, so that's the Captain Kirk moment. This thing that that's just dang peculiar. And I can almost assure you, anytime in an airplane where you're climbing and you're not climbing the way you want, you got the flaps down or you got the gear down. It is almost always that way. So, but there are many other interesting Captain Kirk moments too, but that's one of the most important ones. It's interesting. You can be responsible.
I just figured, hey, I didn't perform well. The plane's not performing well. Yeah. It's just giving me the same thing right back.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the secret, of course, is to be able to transition from that condition to a clean condition without letting anybody else on board know what you did. And what you might say is, perhaps, try this one. Okay, the gear is dry now. I'm going to raise it. Okay. Oh, but wait a minute. There was no water here, and it's been a drought the last 60 years. Yeah, but there was a special water spout we flew over. So just pay attention to what's going on outside. And that's what happens. So we get.
I like that. I like that one as well. That makes it even better. I can just be like, you know what? We absolutely know there's no ice now on the brakes or the gear.
Yeah.
We can finally put it up just in time to take it down.
Rico, safe. Everybody's happy, and your career is safe. In 1977, I think it was, I was up in Modesto, California, and I did a seminar up there for the Fresno FSDO, and that's in the San Joaquin Valley. It's been a big valley. It was carved out by a glacier a couple weeks ago, and so Modesto is a nice little place, and they have a drive-in theater. For people that don't know what a drive-in theater is, and I am dating myself, it's where you go to hook a camera up to your, catch a microphone, you hook it onto your window, and you pay money, of course, to watch a big screen presentation in your car. And then, of course, when you know that you did something wrong because you wake up the next day at a swap meet, which is typical for people that go to drive-in theaters. And my friend Larry told me, he said, at the Modesto Theater, and it was 1977, the movie Tora, Tora, Tora was playing there. It's one of the first drive-in places it started playing. And Tora, 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 a very famous film about the events that happened in December many years ago when the Wright brothers bombed Pearl Harbor. No, wait, there wasn't the Wright brothers. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. It was December 17th, first flight. But anyway, December 7th, Sunday morning, the attack on Pearl Harbor. And it's just a moonless night. And there's this airplane circling above the theater, way, way high, 1,500 feet, relatively high. And he's waiting for the exact time on the screen when the airplanes start bombing Pearl Harbor. And it was a Cessna 150. And as they start bombing, he comes back around, times it properly. He dives into the parking lot at Modesto, pulls his airplane up over the screen, causing everybody in the whole theater go, "Whoa, this is really real, whoa." And this is incredible. And he comes back around, does another dive, and they're going, whoa. The problem was the chief of the Modesto Tower was in the movie theater at the time. In other words, in the parking lot watching the movie. He's going, nah, this is too real. Something's not right. And he gets out and he's looking, those guys walk around everywhere with the binoculars. They go shopping with the binoculars and everything. So wonder they don't have them personally attached right to their head. And he's looking and goes, all right, gotcha. 16832. All right, you're going down. Anyway, they brought him in and he confessed to the deed. But you have to give him credit for creativity. Now I tell that story as one of the things that you should never do in aviation. So I want to make sure nobody should do that. That's not a good thing to do. Of course, now I realize as soon as I say that, it's like a teenager at home watching one of those videos where they say, the TV shows where they say, now what we're going to show you, we don't want you to practice or do at home. And of course, you know what the kid's thinking. They're thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to land an airplane on a truck. Bobby, I want you to get your dad's 18-wheeler and I'll meet you out at the vacant road behind my house. And that's what they think. So aviation's a strange place sometimes. Fascinating things happen in this business.
No kidding. Yeah, hey, so I'd like to talk a little bit for a minute about it, bring in kind of like, again, going back to the psychology of the background that you've got along with the flight instruction side. And in New England now, of course, we are here in the Boston division of the Arctic, and
up where God's frozen people live. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure that there are many other people out there from other parts that are a little warmer, colder than they are out where you are right now, and that tends to keep a lot of people home and away from the airport. And there seems to be, and I'm just going to put my amateur psychology hat on. There seems to be an interesting phenomenon that happens where you can go flying and have this wonderful experience and remember and know how important it is to you, how wonderful it is. And then almost as soon as you get home, it starts to fade. And it's so easy to find other things to do around the house to say, I don't really want to go out in the cold. I don't really want to pull the thing out of the hangar or preheat it or whatever. And it seems that so many people don't get the currency or don't get the proficiency that they need through that, through that philosophy or that way of being. Can you talk a little bit about that, or what you think, is at work and what can be done?
Well, as always, you have interesting questions and interesting observations. And as we excuse me, I should take up smoking. I already have the cough. Excuse me. No, you don't want to take up smoking. Did I mention this before? Smoking's 4 times worse than they originally thought, and they originally thought it would kill you. So this is some bad juju. Anyway, you make an interesting point, Jeffrey, about this, and that is, as I mentioned to you earlier, in fact, this was just in the Wall Street Journal today. The disposition of the human being is that we accommodate pretty much and quite well to being immobilized. In other words, sitting. Chimps sit down about 85% of the time during the day. We always see them in motion because that's when they look good on, in a Jane Goodall film. But the fact is that we do spend a lot of time. The human organism, the primate organism, is like sitting down. It's easy to be a couch potato in that sense. You can do good things on the couch, reading, watching documentaries, watching SocialFlight rerun videos, the most important thing. And that's good. The problem is that one has to keep one's skills sharp, or at least proficient in this case. And it takes a certain amount of motivation to get off the couch and go out and fly. And of course, just as you mentioned earlier, when you go out and fly, all of a sudden you think, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Why am I not doing this more often? And it's basically because that experience that is intense about being in the air, the one that drives and causes us such pleasure, is pretty hard to experience when you're sitting at home. It's like one philosopher, and I don't remember who said this, but he said, when we experience pain, we don't experience pain and we try to recollect it. We don't recollect the pain, but we recollect the recollection of pain.
Hmm.
And that's important, because if we were to recollect the pain, we would experience it all over again. And as a result, we would punish ourselves, and that would be very debilitating. Well, the same thing applies to pleasure. We don't remember the pleasure directly. We remember remembering the pleasure. Okay, that's fine. So in order to help better motivate us, one of the things, Gore Vidal said that about remembering remembering the pain, is one of his books. Anyway, so in order to better motivate us, what we need to do is directly try to remember the pleasure that we experienced, and the sights, the sounds, the tactile sense, and what it was like being there, and try to get a more direct connection with that experience. And that can be done, but one has to try to get all the senses involved in that. I'll give you a good example. I can go out to the airport and just walk around and just enjoy being out at the airport, just being there looking at airplanes. And if I stop and I smell avgas, smell has our olfactory senses are tremendous primers for evoking long-term memories. And if I smell avgas, then I can actually take myself back to that time when I was a student pilot. Now, if I smell avgas or I hear a radial engine of an aircraft fly over, I can get a more concrete experience or reflection on the experience I had. So if you were to, so when I want to go out and fly, and my wife and I experience this together a lot, because sometimes we don't fly as much as we want to together. We just went flying here a couple of days ago. For me to get excited about doing that, I can start to think, yeah, first time flying an airplane, I remember how exciting it was, and I got so much work to do, but I really need to get out and fly despite the COVID zombie apocalypse we're experiencing. So flying, and there I was at the airport, and first time I flew, and oh man, I got to get back in an airplane. So that tends to be evocative, and it's a more direct way to prime our experience. I mean, that's the only way I know how to do it, but it does have a basis in psychological foundation, and it's getting all the experiences, the tactile, the sights, the sounds, olfactory sense, kind of bringing them together to remember the experience directly rather than remembering the experience. That's the key, at least like how it works for me and most people too. So
I like that. Maybe,
great question. Great
come
question.
up with your own kind of kit of whatever it takes, a picture of something that you did. Maybe it's time to get a small jar of avgas. You're going to start telling people to sniff avgas.
All over yourself. Oh, this is great. Well, not so much now, but I think I want to go flying. After I get hosed down and then get on a hazmat suit or something.
Exactly.
There's another thing to consider too. I think part of the problem is when people have been away from flying for any length of time, it's interesting because a lack of distance away from training doesn't necessarily mean a degradation of physical flying skills. And I think we talked about this on the last program. It doesn't mean a degradation of physical flying skills as much as it means a degradation in the confidence we have that we'll be able to fly an airplane successfully. Now, we know we can fly an airplane successfully, of course, but the farther we stay away from flying, we start to wonder, wonder how I would do if this happened in an airplane. It's been a while since I heard air traffic control talk. Will I be able to interpret and respond to that stream of talk that comes out of the tower on the tower controller's radio? I don't know. So it's this sense of self-doubt, lack of confidence that tends to be the issue for most people. Get them in an airplane, 5 or 10 minutes, 15 minutes, all of a sudden, man, that starts coming back real quick. It's not the loss of physical skills. They can still fly the airplane. It's just this, yeah, I got it. I still have it. And it's the self-doubt that goes away. Self-doubt is one of the most important things we have for keeping us safe in situations that require a higher level of skill. Because that's the way we self-monitor ourselves, Gee, I don't feel good, I need some more training, or maybe I need to do something simple before I do something complex, and that's a good deal. I have discovered, for me, after many years of giving flight reviews to people that, as an example, haven't flown for decades, 25 years, it's amazing because 25 years, you think somebody's going to lose their flying skills substantially, and that's not necessarily the case. If a guy's been away for 25 years, within the first hour, he'll easily be able to land the airplane again. Easy, guy or gal. You think 25 years, and you can come back and land an airplane. Yeah, and I mean land it well enough to be able to rent it again. So it's a good landing, and on the numbers. Typically the first ones you fly over rather than the one at the far end of the runway, and doesn't necessarily precede the arrival of fire trucks. But the deal is that it is a very it's a very confidence losing game that one has when one's away from flying for a while. So my response to anybody that says, gosh, I don't know if I can keep up and what have you, if you can't go out and fly for an entire hour, go out and fly for 10 minutes, go out and fly for 15 minutes, do a couple touch and goes, land the airplane. Doesn't cost a lot of money. You're going to be absolutely amazed at how that re-evokes that confidence level and re-inspires and has a more indelible effect than one might think, and keeps you going for maybe another month until you can get out and fly again, maybe have more money to rent the airplane for a longer period of time. Doesn't take a lot to keep
that makes a lot of sense.
Proficient.
Absolutely. And I almost wonder, based on everything that you've said, if it's almost that your brain is the longer you stay away from it, your doubt starts to rise in your confidence, and you start and then it's almost a protectionist mechanism to say, maybe we won't, maybe we'll mow the lawn instead, maybe I'll do this other thing instead of going or braving the cold. Part of it, maybe a tiny voice inside your head saying, it's been a while, are you really up to it?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. Although I would say that mowing the lawn is a far more risky experience. My dad used to say to me, son, you cut your feet off with that lawnmower, don't you come running to me. Wait a minute. Whoa. That was very confusing. My dad always said things like that. These sort of Zen koans couched in mild bits of advice, and warnings. But yeah, that's it. As I say, based on all my experience flying with people, it's that confidence level that disappears. That's what really is being discussed when people talk about a lack of currency. And of course, yes, there's no doubt that the more precise the skill required, the more frequent one needs to practice that skill to maintain that high level of precision. But flying an ILS and what have you, hopefully it doesn't look like what I'm doing right here, but flying an ILS, one can practice and maintain those skills on a flight simulator at home to a degree that just, if anybody actually uses themselves as an experiment, this will blow them away, because you can maintain that instrument currency by sitting at home with a Microsoft Flight Sim, a joystick. Don't need rudder pedals because most people don't use them anyway. And they should use them. I'm just kidding around. I'm kidding around because I don't have adult supervision. So, yeah, it's a good question. Very, very good question. And
that
doesn't make sense.
Which is flight simulator. So now, obviously, and I'm going to say this in the most polite way possible, of course, you've been a flight instructor for a long time. And during that, and especially now with what we've all experienced over the last year, there's probably been a lot of people that have spent a lot of time at home with flight simulators. What have you seen with students that has changed over the years with what's happened with flight simulators at home? How have things changed in terms of some of the fun stories you've had or anything else that's come up?
Well, in terms of the practical aspect of the flight simulator, it's probably reduced the cost for student training for many a student that has actually bothered to use the simulator. And I always use the example of Ed Valdez, Captain Ed Valdez, United Airlines captain, and an amazing instructor at Cypress College in Southern California. And I wrote an article about this. It's on my blog at rodmachado.com. And Ed will take a student, require typically a demo flight, one demo flight at the beginning of class, and then they'll go for an entire 6 months with no flight training whatsoever, only simulator training. And when you read about and talk to the students and then read about the experiences of these students on their first actual flight, as one student, and I apologize for not remembering his name, he's in the article that's on my blog, it's on flight simulators as a training tool. The student went out to the airport, asked the instructor to let him do everything in the airplane as much as possible, because Ed, in his simulator class that he teaches at Cypress College, has amazing all Microsoft-based simulators, wonderful big windows, and it's very, very impressive. And said to the instructor, let me do as much as I can and take over when possible. And the student, and this happened, I wouldn't say this if I didn't think, and if I didn't have other evidence in order to support it. The student said the instructor only had to intervene one time in the flight, and it wasn't on landing, by the way. And I forget where the intervention occurred, but only had to take over once. But the student basically flew the airplane for the entire 45 minutes to an hour flight. Now that, and I made the radio calls and did everything. Now that is impressive. And that happens all the time when a good instructor is involved. And you have to have a good instructor, somebody that, make sure they know that they will teach you to use a simulator to replicate the experience and not experience the negative effect of it being a simulator. Because of course, in a simulator, as an example, you can't look for traffic. You can, but you're not going to see traffic. So what has to happen is you have to look for traffic as a developmental thing, not as a thing where you're actually going to, it's a matter of life and death in this case. Have it.
Oh, hold on, you got something with your mic.
That's weird. Maybe I should stop moving here. Okay, is that better?
Yes, all better.
Okay, good. Yeah, that wasn't my mic. It was actually my fillings. That's why electromagnetic activity in my fillings. So it's the last time I'm going to a dentist without a license. All right. Anyway, no, he does have.
Well, it's interesting. Someone told me, and I assume this is true, but there was someone who I talked to was a commercial pilot for a major airline who said the first time that that they were actually flying the real hardware was paying passengers and back. Everything before that was the simulator.
Well, that's not uncommon at all. That's actually quite common. If you go to flight safety and you get a type rating in one of the big fancy jets they have now, some Gulfstream variety of Gulfstream aircraft or any other type of jet aircraft, typically your first flight will be in the real airplane as pilot in command, carrying passengers. That's how real that stuff is. Let me show you how real it is. United Airlines, one instructor that was a training instructor in United Airlines, they were basically doing the 6-month check on captains when they did them every 6 months. And the simulation is so real that one captain had a heart attack. I mean, that's how real it was. Yikes. So yeah, that's right. So they kick the simulator door open, they're dragging this guy out and they wave, next, come on. And that's so basically it's a heart attack simulator is what it is. And but talk about scary stuff. But the point is that simulators have a depth of realism now that is so effective that it actually allows you to get what the FAA considers is authentic experience. So that's it's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, and it I'll tell you, we've got a sim here, and one of the things that really amazes me is there's also software, including companies like Pilot Edge, that provide online ATC, and yes. That's just amazing that all of that exists all in one place, and now you can get cleared for your approach, you can get monitored during it, everything.
Well, very, very, very much so. The ability to maintain your skill level is phenomenal. I'll do the same thing. I'll fly the Bonanza or the Boeing 737 and shoot approaches all over the basin here, and it's very impressive. And I find that in terms of the behaviors I would use to fly a sim, shooting an ILS as an example, so it doesn't look like sword fights at a samurai convention, then I can I'll find it transfers directly to the airplane. But it's always been that way. Now, some people say, well, simulator doesn't really feel like a real airplane. It doesn't fly like a real airplane. Well, my response to that is I have flown real airplanes that don't fly like real airplanes. So it's not an issue. All you have to do is have a basic representation of what airplanes do, and that is absolutely good enough to allow skills to transfer. And of course, the better the representation, the better it is for somebody that has less experience, of course. But for Microsoft Flight Sim, as an example, the old one, Microsoft Flight Sim X, perfectly acceptable and valuable, valuable training tool. Many years ago at Long Beach City College, a student of mine, Marty, was taking training on an old desktop ATC 610. And I hope I didn't mention the story before here, but it's an old desktop simulator, and it was wonderful. Though it was mechanical, all the instruments and everything were mechanically driven. It's just a great sim, very expensive, but it weighed about 350 pounds or so, you know, but it's okay. Sat there in the desk, and Marty would have a student sitting next to him that played air traffic control on this left-hand side. So Marty's climbing out in the simulator. He's air traffic control, turning right, heading 360 degrees, and okay, turn right. And then that's what they did. So Marty's very first flight after graduating from Long Beach City College was to come over to the airport, take a flight with me. And I said, he had the experience. I talked to him. So I said, we're going to file IFR to VFR on top. File IFR to VFR on top. We get in the airplane, runway, run up, run the runway for takeoff. Excuse me. We're climbing out. And I said, Marty, better go to departure control. And Marty switches the radio. And all of a sudden, he didn't move his hands on the push to talk switch, didn't do any of that. All of a sudden, I hear him yelling out saying, coast approach, 2132 Bravo, climbing 3,000 feet over, like that. I'm going, oh my gosh, he's not using the radio. He thinks he's flashed back to being in ground school at Long Beach. So I look over and go, 2132 Bravo, this is coast approach. We can hear you better if you open the window, over. And because anyway, so he had a good time. We were just kidding, and you know, he realized that. But of course, he doesn't realize that I'm telling the story now all over the world, spreading it at the speed of light. So that's why I used a fake name. Real name wasn't Marty; it was Martin. So,
well, you know, I mean, that harkens right back to what you said before, which is that the skills, the learning to ride a bike, the mechanical aspect of it is the part that you retain no matter what. So whether it feels exactly like the plane, that's the easy part. I think it's staying ahead of the aircraft in your mind. That's the hard part.
It is. That's very, very true. That's why I'd always tap my students on the shoulder whenever we're flying. I would say, what are the next two things? And they would tell me, and I would just do this. VFR students, IFR students, what are the next? So I didn't even have to say it. I would just do this, and they'd go, okay, put the flaps down, set the power for a base turn. Okay, let's do it like this. Okay, check the gas, undercarriage flaps, fuel, blah, blah, blah. And they would do that as a matter of recourse. It became an habitual reflex for them. Powerful stuff. And it's kind of stuff that really does help a person accommodate to the demands of flying. So it's here's the interesting thing. When you look at all the new research and all the cutting edge research that's been done on accelerated learning and behavior change, and what have you, and we're always looking for that, you know, that mystic kernel of insight that allows us to do things other people can't do. Well, I've got news for you. It doesn't exist. What does exist, and this is where all the research boils down to, is this, and that is that if you want to get good at something, getting good is just a matter of the number of times, the number of repetitions you practiced that thing. Oh my gosh. You mean it's actually that simple? And the answer is yes, it's that simple. The ultimate skill to have is the skill of staying with a schedule of practice. In other words, if you have to have one talent, if you're lucky, you have the talent to stick with a schedule of practice and not give up. And when it comes to flying an ILS, you do that on your simulator. You shoot 100 ILS approaches, put yourself out, 2 miles to the side of the outer marker, 2 miles square out and off to the side, and then intercept the approach course before the outer marker and fly the ILS down to minimums and set different levels of turbulence. Do that 100 times and you watch the difference between your performance. Then beginning and now, it's just phenomenal. Skill comes from constant practice and repetition. There is just no great secrets to this whole thing. The secret is that there is no secret. Once you got that, it's just phenomenal. It's just bonehead practice. That's
So the
what all the
skill is the
research indicates.
persistence. The persistence is the skill.
That's it. That's it. Do you know, man, I know we're getting close to the end here, but do you know how many kicks and punches a person has to demonstrate, do, practice, or deploy in order to eventually earn an authentic black belt?
Tell me.
1,000 hours over a 3-year period. If you have basic physical skills at all, 1,000 hours of practice over a 3-year period will get you an honestly earned black belt, assuming you have good training, what have you. That's at a minimum. Isn't that amazing? A
Yeah.
1,000 hours of practice. Now, is it any wonder that an ATP certificate requires 1,500 hours of practice? No. In other words, 1,500 hours of experience. Hopefully that's practice. And hopefully it's not practicing the same 1,500 times, but there are some similarities there. It's all a matter of practice.
Amazing. Well, Rod, as we look forward into 2021 now and coming out of a rough year and hopefully going into a much brighter one, what are your thoughts looking forward for general aviation, for all the pilots that are out there listening tonight?
Listen, I'm optimistic in terms of general aviation. I think that with the advent of electric airplanes, that will make aviation a lot less expensive for people to learn how to fly, and that I think is probably one of the biggest reasons to be excited and thrilled about airplanes here. It doesn't matter if you learn to fly in an electric airplane. It just matters that you learn to fly. And then you can always upgrade the skills to different levels of different types of equipment. It's irrelevant what you start in. My advice is start in the simplest, least expensive thing you can get your hands on, even if it's an air coupe, which is one of my favorite airplanes, by the way.
I love those.
I love them too. I didn't realize, really. Oh, it's wonderful. I soloed somebody in 4.7 hours once at John Wayne Airport in an air coupe. That's great stuff. I got stories.
And it seems like also, I never look at the most basic aircraft as downward in any way, shape, or form, because my God, there's some of the most fun to fly. You talk about like 150s, 152s. Oh my God, there are many days I'd look at that and say, oh my God, I'd rather go up in that. That is so much fun.
Oh, well, we are like birds of a feather here, because it used to be when I was young, I wanted to fly a big airplane because, that was what supported my ego. And, but, I managed to get over that pretty quick. And because that's what all young people do, they want to see, I fly a big airplane. And the unfortunate thing is, for many people, we let other people determine how we experience aviation. And other people, they ask us, oh, you fly, what kind of airplane you fly? Oh, I fly a 150. Oh, well, I fly a 182. There are these subtleties that occur that sort of, try to, tarmac dominance is what I call it. And the fact is, don't let anybody else tell you what kind of airplane you should fly. Feel good about flying the airplane you do fly. I mean, I had one guy at an AOPA seminar come up one time and he handed me a card. I am not making this up. He handed me a card, and on the card it said jet pilot. And I'm, whoa. And my first thought was, thank you, God, for sending me somebody to play with. And I said, jet pilot, that's amazing. That's just amazing. What kind of jet ski is it? And he said, no, it's not jet ski. It's a actual jet. I didn't know jet skis actually had jet engines. That is amazing. He says, no, I'm not talking to you anymore. And he walks away, got so upset. Hey, can I have your card? And maybe you sign it for me, jet pilot? And anyway, sometimes we're a little too full of ourselves, and I couldn't resist,
Oh, that's I'm absolutely with you. No matter what it is, it seems like fun to me. If someone pulls up, I don't care if they pull up. I don't care if they pull up in a powered parachute or a trike. I'm going to look at that and go, that looks like fun. Can I go in?
Yeah, that doesn't look like fun, but that looks like fun, and that looks like fun, because all that stuff is just that gets me excited. I love it. It's just really good fun. Anyway, I think things are bode well for 2021, and one thing we will have is a lot of educated pilots, because during the majority of this year, a lot of people have spent time at home studying, going to webinars and things like that, and there's probably no excuse not to be deficient on basic general aviation knowledge, and that's a very, very good thing. By the way, let me just say this. My website is rodmachado.com, and For the next 3 days, if you remember this code 2021, 2021, 2021, in other words, for the next year, easy to remember, starting 2 days from now. But in 5 minutes after this program ends, 2021 will be a code for 25% discount on anything at rodmachado.com for 3 days.
Well, you totally beat me to it. I was going to point everyone right there because I've got to say, so if we didn't even get to it in the beginning, Rod's books include Rod Machado's Private Pilot Handbook, Instrument Pilot's Handbook, Instrument Pilot's Survival Manual, How to Fly an Airplane, Plane Talk, and Speaking of Flying, and I'm sure among many, many others. And so absolutely to everyone, go to rodmachado.com, use code 2021, take advantage of this because I just, you know what, I'm thrilled every single time you come on the show. I hope you'll come back again when we are well into 2021 and enjoying the light at the end of this tunnel.
It would be my pleasure, Jeffrey. And you run a great show, and you're doing a great service for General Aviation. SocialFlight is just a great place to go to collect, connect, and convey. And the guests, Mike Bush and all these other wonderful folks. Oh my gosh, I couldn't name them all, so I won't even try. But they're just, I'm impressed. So you have a great cadre of speakers, and I'm sure you're going to have some great ones next year too.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you to everyone who dialed in this evening, took time out of your schedule in order to join us. We are all here for the same reason, to support General Aviation. And I would encourage you, please get the SocialFlight mobile app. Check out socialflight.com because that's where all of this is happening. It's entirely free and just supports our industry. And so again, thank you so much to Rod Machado. I really appreciate it. I treasure your friendship and you coming on the show. And to everyone else also, of course, we will be back beginning in the new year. That is Tuesday, January 5th with Mark and Mike Patey. That will be a lot of fun. We also have on the 12th, Boris Popov, who is the inventor of the whole aircraft parachute used on Cirruses and so many other aircraft. We're going to learn about that entire story from him. Elliot Seguin, flight testing from Burt Rutan's Scaled Composites is on January 19th. And at the end of the month, on the 26th, Ariel Tweedo of Flying Wild Alaska will be joining us. So many cool guests. And of course, Rod will be back with us in the future as well. Until next time, thank you so much, Rod. Thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. Have a wonderful end of 2020, of safe New Year's, and I wish you all blue skies.